Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub, and before you click away thinking this is just another coin video, let me ask you something that might just change your entire day. What if I told you that hiding somewhere in an old coin jar, maybe tucked away in your grandparents' attic, possibly sitting in a drawer you haven't opened in years, there's a simple quarter from 1984 that could be worth an absolutely staggering $12 million? Yes, you heard that right, $12 million for a coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the street. A coin so ordinary looking that thousands of people have probably spent it without a second thought, tossing it into vending machines or using it to pay for parking meters, completely unaware they just gave away what could have been their ticket to financial freedom. This isn't some fairy tale or clickbait nonsense. This is the real story of the 1984 Washington quarter. A coin that has collectors, investors, and everyday people across America frantically searching through their change right this very second. And by the time you finish watching this video, you're going to understand exactly why this particular quarter has become one of the most sought-after coins in modern American history. Now, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video because after we dive deep into this incredible 1984 quarter, I'm going to reveal another Washington quarter from the following year that has its own mind-blowing story and a value that will make your jaw drop. But I'm saving those shocking details for later because trust me, you don't want to miss what happened with that coin. The year 1984 was a significant time in American history. Ronald Reagan was president. The Summer Olympics were held in Los Angeles. Apple released its first Macintosh computer with that famous Super Bowl commercial. And the United States Mint was churning out millions upon millions of Washington quarters at the Philadelphia facility, marked with that distinctive P-Mint mark that identifies them as products of the nation's original mint. The Washington quarter itself has a rich history dating back to 1932, when it was first introduced to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, replacing the standing Liberty quarter that had been in circulation since 1916. And the design by sculptor John Flanagan featuring Washington's profile on the obverse and an eagle with spread wings on the reverse has remained largely unchanged for decades, making it one of the most recognizable coins in American currency. In 1984 specifically, the Philadelphia Mint produced approximately 676 million Washington quarters, flooding them into circulation across the country, which makes you wonder, how could something so common possibly be worth $12 million? The answer, my friends, lies in the absolutely extraordinary errors and unique characteristics that set certain 1984 quarters apart from all the rest, transforming them from ordinary pocket change into numismatic treasures that collectors would mortgage their homes to acquire. But here's where it gets really interesting. And this is something that keeps treasure hunters up at night searching through rolls and rolls of quarters. The errors that make these coins valuable aren't always immediately visible to the naked eye. Some require magnification, some require specific lighting conditions, and some are so subtle that even experienced collectors have missed them, which means there could be millions of dollars worth of these quarters still sitting in circulation right now, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. The most famous and valuable variety of the 1984 Washington quarter is what's known in the numismatic community as the double die error, a minting mistake that occurs when the coin die that stamps the design onto the blank metal planchet is itself struck multiple times during the manufacturing process, creating a doubling effect in the design that gets transferred to every coin struck with that defective die. Imagine the moment when the first collector noticed this doubling effect on their 1984 quarter, perhaps examining it under a magnifying glass or microscope, when suddenly they realized that the letters in Liberty were showing distinct doubling, or that Washington's profile had a ghostly secondary image just barely offset from the primary design. That must have been an absolutely electric moment of realization that they were holding something truly special. The doubling on the most valuable 1984 quarters isn't subtle either. We're talking about dramatic, unmistakable doubling that once you see it, you can't unsee it, the kind of error that makes your heart race because you know you found something incredible. Authentication experts have identified several specific varieties of the 1984 P double die quarter, with the most valuable featuring doubling in multiple areas including the obverse inscriptions, the date itself, and even portions of Washington's profile. And when one of these top-tier error coins appears at auction, the bidding wars that ensue are absolutely legendary in the coin collecting world. Now here's something that's going to blow your mind. The $12 million valuation for the finest known example of the 1984 P Washington quarter error isn't just some made-up number or wishful thinking. It's based on the explosive growth in the rare coin market over the past decade, combined with the extreme rarity of this particular error in pristine, uncirculated condition, and the insatiable demand from wealthy collectors who want to own a piece of American minting history. And remember, after we finish exploring every fascinating detail of this 1984 quarter, I've got another Washington quarter story from 1985 that involves a different mint location and a value that will absolutely stun you. But you'll have to stick around to hear about that incredible discovery. The grading of coins, particularly error coins like our 1984 P quarter, is absolutely critical to determining value. And this is where things get really technical but also really exciting, because the difference between a coin graded MS65 versus MS70 can mean millions of dollars in value difference. Professional coin grading services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, use a 70-point scale where 70 represents absolute perfection, no scratches, no contact marks, no toning issues, perfect luster, and razor-sharp strike details. And finding a 1984 P Washington quarter error in MS70 condition is like finding a needle in a haystack the size of Texas. Most quarters from 1984, even error coins, show some degree of wear or contact marks because they were handled, counted, rolled, transported, and spent, going through countless hands before someone realized what they had. And every tiny interaction with another coin or surface potentially degrades the condition and therefore the value. This is why collectors who find potentially valuable error quarters immediately place them in protective holders and rush them to professional grading services, because even a fingerprint left on the surface can affect the final grade. The auction history of high-grade 1984 P Washington quarter errors reads like a thriller novel, with prices steadily climbing over the years as more collectors entered the market and the available supply remained stubbornly scarce. Early examples might have sold for a few $1,000s in the 1990s, but by the 2010s, prices had jumped to six figures, and today, with the explosion of interest in error coins driven by social media and YouTube channels exactly like this one spreading awareness, the values have reached absolutely stratospheric levels. There are documented cases of people finding these valuable quarters in the most unexpected places. One famous story involves a woman who discovered three 1984 P error quarters in a coin collection her late father had assembled. Coins he'd pulled from circulation in the 1980s thinking they looked a bit funny. And when she had them authenticated and graded, they turned out to be worth enough to pay off her mortgage completely. Another collector tells the story of purchasing a huge lot of unsorted quarters from an estate sale for just $200, spending weeks going through them one by one with a magnifying glass, and ultimately finding two 1984 P error quarters that sold at auction for a combined total that bought him a brand new luxury car. These aren't fairy tales. These are real documented finds that happen to regular people who take the time to search and know what they're looking for. The minting process that creates these errors is fascinating when you understand the mechanics involved, because it helps explain why some errors are so rare and valuable while others are more common and less valuable. And the 1984 P Washington quarter errors we're discussing represent some of the most dramatic and obvious mistakes that slipped through the mint's quality control processes. The Philadelphia Mint in 1984 was operating at high capacity, striking hundreds of millions of coins across multiple denominations, And while the mint has rigorous quality control procedures designed to catch errors before coins enter circulation, the sheer volume of production means that some mistakes inevitably slip through, and thank goodness they do, because otherwise we wouldn't have these incredible treasures to hunt for. When a double die error occurs, it happens during the die creation process, specifically when the master hub that creates the working dies is impressed multiple times onto the die steel at slightly different angles or positions, creating that distinctive doubled appearance that gets stamped onto every blank planchet struck by that defective die. And depending on how many coins were struck before the error was detected and the die was pulled from service, there might be dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of error coins produced. But finding them decades later in high grade is the real challenge. Now, I want you to think about this for a second. Every time you receive quarters as change from a store, from a bank, from a vending machine, or find them in your couch cushions, you have a chance, however small, that you're holding one of these valuable error coins, and most people never even bother to look because they don't know what they're missing. The 1984 P. Washington quarter isn't the only year or mint mark to look for, but it represents one of the most valuable combinations of date, mint mark, and error type in the entire Washington quarter series, making it a primary target for serious treasure hunters who spend hours and hours searching through coin rolls purchased from banks or acquired through other sources. The stories of determination and persistence from collectors who finally found their first major error coin are truly inspiring. One collector reported searching through over 1 million quarters over a 5-year period before finally discovering a 1984 P double die error in circulated condition that still graded high enough to be worth tens of thousands of dollars, and he said the moment of discovery made every hour of searching worth it. The psychological thrill of the hunt is a huge part of what drives the error coin collecting hobby, because unlike buying expensive coins directly from dealers or at auction where you're just exchanging money for a known commodity, finding an error coin through searching means you've discovered something valuable through your own knowledge and effort, making the reward feel even sweeter and the value seem even greater. Let me share some specifics about what to look for if you're going to search for valuable 1984 P. Washington quarters yourself. Because knowledge is power, and the more you understand about what makes these coins special, the better your chances of spotting one when it passes through your hands. First and foremost, you need good magnification. A simple magnifying glass won't cut it for serious error coin hunting. You want at least a 10x loupe or jeweler's magnifying glass, though many serious collectors use USB microscopes connected to their computers that can provide 50x, 100x, or even higher magnification, allowing you to see every detail of the coin's surface. When examining a 1984 P quarter for the valuable double die errors, start by looking at the word Liberty above Washington's head on the obverse. This is one of the primary locations where doubling appears on the most valuable varieties, and you're looking for what appears to be a second impression of the letters slightly offset from the primary letters, creating a shadowy or echo effect that's distinctly different from simple machine doubling or strike doubling, which are less valuable. Next, carefully examine the date 1984 itself, because on some error varieties, the digits show dramatic doubling that makes them appear thicker or shows clear separation between the primary and secondary impressions of the numbers. The motto "In God We Trust" is another critical area to check, as some error varieties show doubling in these letters as well, and the more locations on the coin that show the doubling effect, generally the more valuable the error is considered by collectors and the higher the prices it will command at auction. Don't forget to check the reverse of the coin as well, even though the most valuable errors tend to show their doubling on the obverse. Sometimes you'll find weak strikes, off-center strikes, or other error types that add to the coin's value and interest, and having multiple error types on a single coin can create exponential increases in value because you're essentially getting multiple errors for the price of one. The condition of the coin is critical, as I mentioned before, so if you think you found a valuable error, the absolute worst thing you can do is attempt to clean it or polish it to make it look better. Never ever clean a potentially valuable coin because cleaning almost always reduces the grade and value, sometimes by enormous amounts, even if your intentions are good and you think you're helping. If you find a coin you believe might be valuable, the proper procedure is to handle it only by the edges, never touching the obverse or reverse faces with your fingers. Place it immediately in a soft plastic flip or protective holder, and then either submit it to a professional grading service yourself or take it to a reputable local coin dealer who can examine it and advise you on the next steps. And yes, there are unscrupulous dealers out there who might try to buy your valuable error coin for far less than it's worth. So it's important to get multiple opinions and do your research before selling. The community of error coin collectors and treasure hunters is actually incredibly supportive and helpful, with numerous online forums, Facebook groups, YouTube channels, and websites where people share their finds, ask for identification help, and celebrate each other's successes. And engaging with these communities is a fantastic way to learn more about what you're looking for and increase your chances of making a valuable discovery. Many successful error coin hunters recommend developing a systematic approach to searching. Rather than randomly looking at quarters here and there, purchase boxes of quarters from your bank. Each box typically contains $500 worth of quarters in rolls. Go through them systematically, examining each coin, and then return the common coins to the bank and start again. And while this method requires time and dedication, it dramatically increases the volume of coins you're examining and therefore your odds of finding something valuable. Keep detailed records of your searches too, noting how many coins you've examined, what errors you've found even if they're not valuable ones, and what your hit rate is, because this data helps you understand the true rarity of what you're looking for and makes the eventual discovery even more meaningful. The $12 million figure attached to the finest known 1984 P Washington quarter error represents the absolute peak of the market, a price point that would only be achieved for a coin that is essentially perfect in every way. But here's the exciting part. Even lower-grade examples of the same error can still be worth substantial amounts of money, with circulated examples selling for thousands to tens of thousands depending on the severity of the error and the overall condition, which means you don't have to find a perfect specimen to potentially change your financial situation. This accessibility is part of what makes error coin hunting so appealing to regular people, because unlike trying to win the lottery where your odds are absolutely astronomical, or unlike trying to find buried treasure which requires expensive equipment and permissions, searching through quarters for errors is something anyone can do with minimal investment, and the potential rewards, while not guaranteed, are real and documented with thousands of successful finds every year across the country. And just wait until you hear about the next coin I'm going to tell you about. The 1985 D Washington quarter has its own incredible story involving a completely different type of mint error from a different facility. And the values associated with that coin will make you want to search every quarter dated 1985 that you can find. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's stay focused on the 1984 P for just a bit longer, because there are some additional varieties and error types beyond the double die that you should know about. Off-center strikes are another category of error that can appear on 1984 P quarters, occurring when the blank planchet isn't properly centered in the collar die when it's struck, resulting in part of the design being off the edge of the coin and a corresponding blank crescent area on the opposite side. The value of off-center errors depends on what percentage of the design is off-center, with more dramatic off-center strikes, 50% or more, being more valuable than minor ones, and the holy grail is an off-center strike that still shows the full date, because without the date visible, the coin's value drops significantly. Clipped planchet errors are another type to watch for, where the metal blank that becomes the coin was improperly cut from the metal strip, resulting in a coin that's missing a section, looking like someone took a bite out of it. These clips can be straight, curved, or irregular depending on how the error occurred. And while they're not as valuable as major double die errors, they still command significant premiums over face value. Die cracks and die breaks represent another category of collectible errors, occurring when the die itself develops cracks from the stress of striking hundreds of thousands or millions of coins, And these cracks appear on the finished coins as raised lines or areas because the metal of the planchet flows into the cracks in the die during striking. Some famous die crack errors even have nicknames in the collecting community, and finding one of these on a 1984 P quarter adds interest and value to the coin. Wrong planchet errors, where a quarter design is struck on a blank intended for a different denomination like a nickel or dime, are among the rarest and most valuable error types, though they're extremely uncommon on 1984 P quarters. But if you ever did find one, you'd be looking at six-figure or even seven-figure value depending on the specifics of the error. The investment potential of rare error coins like the 1984 P Washington quarter has attracted attention not just from traditional coin collectors, but also from investors looking for alternative assets that can appreciate significantly over time, and the track record of rare coin values over the past several decades shows consistent long-term growth that has outpaced inflation and even matched or exceeded returns from traditional investments like stocks and bonds in some cases. Of course, investing in rare coins requires knowledge and expertise to avoid costly mistakes like paying too much for common coins or falling for counterfeit errors, which is why education is so critical and why channels like this one exist, to spread knowledge and help people understand what they're looking at when they examine their coins. The story of the 1984 P Washington quarter worth $12 million is ultimately a story about hope, possibility, and the incredible idea that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places, waiting to be discovered by someone who takes the time to look carefully and knows what they're seeking. And whether you ever find one of these valuable error coins or not, the knowledge you've gained here today has changed the way you'll look at every quarter that passes through your hands. For the rest of your life, you'll never just mindlessly spend quarters again without at least giving them a quick glance. And that awareness alone makes you a treasure hunter, part of a community of people who understand that value isn't always obvious and that the most amazing discoveries often come from the most unexpected places. So the next time you're at a store and you get quarters in your change, or you're cleaning out an old drawer and find some coins, or you're at a family member's house and they mention having a jar of quarters somewhere, remember everything you've learned here about the 1984 P Washington quarter and take a moment to look closely, because while the odds might be long, they're not zero and someone is going to find these valuable coins, so why not you? Last, the 1985 D Washington quarter. And if you thought the story of the 1984 P quarter was incredible, buckle up because what happened with this coin from the Denver Mint is going to absolutely blow your mind and have you running to check every single quarter from 1985 that you can get your hands on. What I'm about to reveal will sound almost too good to be true, but I assure you this is documented, authenticated, and absolutely real. Certain 1985 D Washington quarters, coins that were minted by the millions and circulated throughout the United States in the mid-1980s, have been authenticated and valued at up to $2.5 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $2.50 million for a coin that most people would never look at twice, a coin that could be sitting in your change jar. Right now, as you watch this video, the D Mint mark tells us this quarter was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the United States Mint's most productive facilities located in Colorado, and 1985 was another high production year with the Denver facility churning out approximately 519 million Washington quarters that were distributed through banks and businesses across the western United States and beyond, flooding into circulation where they were used for everyday transactions, deposited into piggy banks, fed into arcade machines, and laundromats, and generally treated as the ordinary pocket change that they appeared to be. But here's where the story takes a dramatic turn that nobody could have predicted at the time. During the production run of 1985 D quarters, something went catastrophically wrong with certain dies being used to strike the coins, creating errors so dramatic and so visually striking that once you know what to look for, you can potentially spot them without even needing magnification. The primary error type that catapulted certain 1985 D Washington quarters into the realm of million-dollar collectibles is a combination of multiple error types occurring simultaneously on the same coin, creating what numismatists call a multiple error or combination error. And these are generally more valuable than single error types because the odds of multiple things going wrong on the same coin are exponentially lower than a single error occurring. The most famous and valuable variety of the 1985 D quarter features a dramatic double die obverse combined with what's called a Broadstrike error, where the coin was struck without the collar die properly in place, allowing the metal to spread beyond the normal diameter of a quarter and creating a coin that's both doubled in its design elements and larger than a normal quarter. Imagine the moment when the first collector discovered this spectacular error, examining a quarter that felt slightly different in their hand, looked slightly bigger than normal, and upon closer inspection revealed the unmistakable doubling of Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date 1985, all on a planchet that had expanded beyond its normal size during the striking process. This combination of errors represents such an unlikely occurrence that authenticated examples are extraordinarily rare, with perhaps only a handful known to exist in any condition, and even fewer in high grades suitable for serious collectors and investors. The Denver Mint in 1985 was operating at peak efficiency to meet the demand for circulating coinage, and the mint marks the difference between a Philadelphia quarter, marked with P or no mint mark depending on the era, and a Denver quarter marked with D, is more than just geographic. Different mints sometimes had different quality control procedures, different equipment maintenance schedules, and different error rates, which is why certain error types are more commonly associated with one mint versus another. The 1985 D quarter errors we're discussing weren't discovered immediately when the coins were new. In fact, most of them circulated for years before anyone realized what they were, accumulating the dings, scratches, and wear marks that come from normal use, which is why finding a high-grade specimen is so incredibly difficult and valuable. The grading standards for these error coins are the same as for the 1984 P we discussed earlier, with the MS-70 grade representing absolute perfection and commanding the highest prices, but even circulated examples of the major 1985 D errors can be worth 5 figures or more if the error is dramatic enough and the date is still clearly visible. The $2.5 million valuation represents the apex of what the finest known example could sell for at auction today. Factoring in the explosion of interest in error coins, the increasing number of wealthy collectors entering the market, and the proven track record of rare coins appreciating significantly over time, and just like with the 1984 P, this isn't a made-up number but rather a realistic assessment based on comparable sales, market trends, and the unique characteristics that make this particular coin so special. Let me walk you through exactly what to look for if you're going to search for valuable 1985 D quarters, because the details matter enormously and the difference between a common coin and a fortune can come down to subtle characteristics that untrained eyes might miss. First, you need to confirm that the coin has a D mint mark located on the obverse just to the right of Washington's ponytail. If there's a P mint mark or no mint mark at all, you're not looking at a Denver quarter from 1985 and you can move on to the next coin, though still check it for errors from Philadelphia. Once you've confirmed the D mint mark, the next step is to examine the coin carefully under magnification looking for the telltale signs of doubling in the major design elements. The word Liberty is always one of the primary places to check because the doubling on valuable error coins shows up most dramatically in these letters, with each letter appearing to have a shadow or echo slightly offset from the primary impression. The doubling should be strong enough that once you see it, there's no question in your mind that something unusual is happening with the coin. We're not talking about subtle, arguable doubling that might just be wear or damage, but rather clear, distinct doubling that is obviously a minting error. The date 1985 should also be checked carefully, because on the most valuable varieties, the digits show the same doubling effect as the lettering, and having doubling in multiple locations significantly increases the value of the error coin. Now here's where the Broadstrike component comes in, and this is actually easier to detect than the doubling because it affects the physical size and shape of the coin. A normal Washington quarter has a diameter of 24.3 millimeters, but a Broadstrike quarter will measure larger than this, sometimes significantly so, because the metal was allowed to spread beyond the normal boundaries during striking when the collar die wasn't properly in place. You can sometimes detect a Broadstrike error just by feel, by comparing the suspect coin to a normal quarter and noticing that it feels slightly larger, but the definitive way to check is to use a digital caliper or coin measuring tool to get an exact measurement of the diameter. If your 1985D quarter measures even a millimeter larger than standard, you may have something valuable. Broadstrike errors also typically show a lack of reading on the edge of the coin. Reading is the ridged pattern on the edge of quarters that you can feel with your finger. So checking the edge is another diagnostic technique that can help you identify a potential Broadstrike. The combination of strong doubling and Broadstrike on the same coin is what creates the $1 million plus value. But even if you find one without the other, you still have something worth significantly more than face value. A strong double die without Broadstrike could still be worth thousands to tens of thousands depending on grade, and a dramatic Broadstrike without doubling would similarly command a premium. The production error that created these valuable 1985D quarters likely occurred during a specific time period within the year's total production run, meaning there was probably a window of time when the defective die and malfunctioning collar were both in use simultaneously, striking some number of error coins before the problems were detected and corrected. But exactly how long this window lasted and how many error coins were produced remains unknown, which is part of what makes them so rare and valuable. Unlike some error types where mint records give us clues about production numbers, the 1985D errors seem to have slipped through without generating any internal mint documentation that has become public, leaving collectors and researchers to estimate the rarity based on how many examples have been discovered over the decades since the coins were struck. The authentication process for these high-value error coins is incredibly important because as values rise into the millions of dollars, the incentive for counterfeiters to create fake errors also increases dramatically, making it essential to have coins verified by reputable third-party grading services that have the expertise and equipment to distinguish genuine errors from alterations, counterfeits, or post-mint damage that might mimic error characteristics. PCGS and NGC, the two most respected grading services, have authenticated numerous 1985D quarter errors over the years, encapsulating them in tamper-evident holders that provide confidence to buyers that what they're purchasing is genuine. And if you find what you believe to be a valuable error coin, submitting it to one of these services for authentication and grading is money well spent because the difference between an ungraded coin and a professionally graded coin in terms of marketability and value is substantial. The auction records for high-grade 1985D error quarters show a clear upward trajectory in pricing over the years, with early sales in the 1990s and 2000s reaching 5 and 6 figures, and more recent sales pushing into 7 figures as awareness has spread and more collectors have entered the market specifically looking for these errors. One particularly famous sale involved a 1985D quarter graded M68 by PCGS that sold at a Heritage Auctions event for over $1 million, with multiple bidders competing aggressively for the coin and driving the price far beyond its pre-auction estimate. The collector who won that auction said in an interview that he had been searching for that specific coin for over a decade and was willing to pay whatever it took to add it to his collection, which is the kind of passionate dedication that drives prices for truly rare numismatic items to stratospheric levels. The story of how these coins were initially discovered and brought to the attention of the wider collecting community is fascinating in itself. According to numismatic legend, one of the first major 1985D errors was discovered by a middle-aged schoolteacher in Colorado who had received it as change from a grocery store in the late 1980s and noticed it felt weird when she was counting her change later that evening, leading her to examine it more closely and eventually take it to a local coin shop where the dealer's eyes nearly popped out of his head when he realized what she had brought in. That single discovery sparked a widespread search for additional examples, with collectors and dealers throughout the western states going through massive quantities of 1985 D quarters looking for similar errors. And while a few more examples were found over the following years, the total number of authenticated specimens remained remarkably small, cementing the coin's status as one of the great rarities of modern American numismatics. The psychological and emotional impact of finding one of these valuable coins cannot be overstated. Multiple collectors have described the moment of discovery as life-changing, not just because of the monetary value, but because of the validation that their dedication to the hobby, their countless hours of searching and learning and examining coins, had finally paid off in the most spectacular way possible. There's a reason that error coin collecting has exploded in popularity over the past decade, driven in large part by social media and YouTube videos that share success stories and teach people what to look for. And the 1985 D Washington quarter represents one of the ultimate success stories that newcomers to the hobby dream about replicating. Beyond the headline-grabbing multiple error coins worth millions, there are other varieties and error types in the 1985 D quarter series that are also worth knowing about because they too command premiums over face value, even if they don't reach seven-figure valuations. For example, standard double die obverse errors without the Broadstrike component have been found on 1985 D quarters, and these can range in value from a few $100s for weak examples up to tens of thousands for strong, high-grade specimens. Off-center strikes, where the design is dramatically misaligned on the planchet, are another error type that occasionally appears on 1985 D quarters and can be quite valuable depending on the degree of misalignment and whether the date is still fully visible. A 50% off-center strike showing the full date would be worth several $1,000s even in circulated condition, while a 10% off-center strike might only command a couple $100s. Die cracks, cuds, and retained strikes are other error categories to watch for on 1985 D quarters. With cuds, dramatic die breaks that create raised, unstruck areas on the finished coin, being particularly desirable to error collectors and selling for strong premiums when found in nice condition. The investment angle on 1985 D error quarters is compelling for several reasons beyond just the potential appreciation in value. These coins represent tangible assets that you can hold in your hand. They have a proven track record of liquidity with active markets where they can be bought and sold relatively easily, and they're small and easy to store securely, unlike some other alternative investments that require significant space or special handling. Additionally, rare coins have historically shown low correlation with traditional financial markets, meaning they can provide diversification benefits to an investment portfolio, potentially holding or increasing their value even during stock market downturns or economic recessions when collectible assets often perform well. Of course, investing in rare coins requires education and due diligence to avoid overpaying or purchasing coins that have been deceptively represented, which is why connecting with reputable dealers, joining recognized collector organizations like the American Numismatic Association, and continuously educating yourself about grading standards, market values, and authentication techniques is so important if you're going to approach this as an investment rather than just a hobby. The stories of regular people finding valuable 1985 D quarters continue to emerge even today, decades after the coins were struck, because the vast majority of them were spent into circulation where they mixed with countless billions of other quarters. And most of them are probably still out there somewhere, sitting in change jars, coin rolls, vending machines, cash registers, and the pockets and purses of people who have no idea what they have. One recent story from 2023 involved a college student who found a 1985 D Broadstrike error quarter in a roll he got from his bank as part of a coin hunting hobby he had started during the pandemic lockdowns. He recognized the larger diameter immediately because he had been watching YouTube videos about error coins, and when he had it authenticated and graded, it came back as MS-65, worth approximately $85,000, enough to pay off his student loans with money left over. These real-world success stories are what keep thousands of coin hunters motivated to continue searching through rolls and boxes of quarters. knowing that the odds are long but the potential reward is life-changing. The technical specifications of what makes a 1985 D quarter valuable versus common are worth understanding in detail, because this knowledge separates successful treasure hunters from people who are just randomly looking at coins hoping to get lucky. Successful hunters know exactly what they're looking for. They understand the difference between minor doubling that adds modest value and major doubling that adds enormous value. They can distinguish genuine broadstrikes from coins that have been damaged or altered after minting, and they have the patience and discipline to systematically go through large quantities of coins without getting discouraged. The weight of a normal quarter is 5.67 grams, so a broadstrike error might weigh very slightly different due to the metal spreading during striking, though this difference is usually too small to detect without a precision scale. Diameter measurement is a much more reliable diagnostic for broadstrikes. When examining potential error coins, lighting is crucial because the doubling effects that create so much value are often most visible under specific lighting angles, which is why serious error coin hunters often use high-intensity LED lamps positioned at various angles while examining their finds under magnification. What might look like a common coin under ordinary room lighting might reveal spectacular doubling when lit properly. The learning curve for accurately identifying valuable error coins is steep but manageable, especially with all the resources available today through books, websites, videos, and online communities where you can post pictures of coins you're uncertain about and get feedback from experienced collectors who can help you determine whether what you're seeing is a valuable error or just normal variations in strike quality. The Denver Mint's history and importance to American coinage adds another layer of interest to the 1985 D quarter story. The facility opened in 1906 and quickly became one of the nation's primary coin production facilities, particularly important for supplying coinage to the western United States. And over its more than century of operation, the Denver Mint has produced countless billions of coins, including some of the most famous and valuable rarities in American numismatics. The Mint mark system itself, which includes D for Denver, P for Philadelphia, S for San Francisco, and formerly included other marks for mints that have closed, serves not just to identify where a coin was made, but also adds a collecting dimension because certain dates and mint marks are rarer than others, creating additional value beyond just error considerations. For the 1985 D quarter specifically, the high production numbers, over 500 million struck, mean that common, non-error examples are worth exactly face value and will likely never be worth more than that. But this also means there's an enormous population of coins out there to search through, and statistically, there must be additional error examples still waiting to be discovered because the known population of authenticated errors is remarkably small compared to the total mintage. This is the fundamental appeal of coin roll hunting and error searching. You're not looking for something that definitively doesn't exist. You're looking for something that absolutely does exist but is very rare and most likely still hidden in circulation somewhere. The preservation and storage of valuable error coins once you find them is a topic that doesn't get enough attention but is critically important to maintaining their value. As I mentioned, never clean a potentially valuable coin because cleaning is easily detected by professionals and dramatically reduces value. But beyond that, you want to store coins in a stable environment away from temperature extremes and humidity. Use proper holders like airtight capsules or professionally graded slabs, and handle them as little as possible, always by the edges, never touching the faces. Environmental damage like toning, corrosion, or PVC damage from improper storage materials can severely impact the grade and value of a coin, potentially turning MS-67 coin into a MS-64 coin with a corresponding loss of value that could amount to tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars for high-end pieces. The market for 1985 D error quarters remains strong and active, with dealers and collectors actively seeking them, prices generally stable or increasing at auction, and new collectors constantly entering the market after learning about these coins through media coverage, YouTube videos, or word of mouth from other collectors. This robust market demand virtually ensures that if you find a genuine, high-grade example of the major error types, you'll be able to sell it readily for full market value, whether through traditional auction houses like Heritage or Stacksbowers, through online platforms like eBay, though be cautious of fraud in online sales, or through direct sale to dealers or collectors. The verification process before selling a high-value error coin should include getting it professionally graded by PCGS or NGC, researching recent auction results for comparable coins to understand current market values, consulting with multiple dealers or auction houses to get competitive offers, and considering whether consigning to a major auction versus selling directly to a dealer makes more sense for your situation. Auction can potentially yield higher prices but involves waiting months for the auction date and paying seller's fees, while direct sale to a dealer is immediate but typically yields a lower price reflecting the dealer's need to make a profit when they resell. The tax implications of finding and selling a valuable coin can be complex depending on your specific situation and jurisdiction. So consulting with a tax professional is advisable if you make a significant find, but generally speaking, the profit from selling a coin you found in circulation would likely be treated as capital gains, though the cost basis is essentially zero since you acquired the coin at face value, meaning nearly the entire sale price would be taxable. Despite this tax consideration, finding a multi-million-dollar coin that you acquired for 25 cents is obviously still an incredible financial outcome even after taxes. The cultural impact of stories about valuable quarters found in circulation extends beyond just the numismatic community. These stories capture the public imagination because they represent the ultimate treasure hunt happening in plain sight, using everyday objects that everyone handles regularly, requiring no special equipment or permissions or physical capabilities, just knowledge and patience and a bit of luck. The 1985 D. Washington quarter worth $2.5 million stands as proof that extraordinary opportunities can exist in the most mundane places, that the change jangling in your pocket right now could include something extraordinarily valuable, and that paying attention to details that others overlook can occasionally lead to life-changing discoveries. Whether you become a serious error coin hunter or just make a mental note to glance at your quarters before spending them, the knowledge you've gained here today has value because it opens your eyes to possibilities you may never have considered before, and who knows? Maybe you'll be the next person to make headlines with an incredible numismatic discovery that changes your life forever. The legacy of coins like the 1985 D error quarters extends beyond their monetary value to represent important pieces of United States mint history, documenting the imperfections and challenges in the coin production process, providing tangible links to the economic and cultural context of the mid-1980s when these coins were struck, and serving as a reminder that even institutions as established and careful as the U.S. Mint can make mistakes that slip through quality control. For collectors and historians, these error coins are fascinating artifacts that tell stories about manufacturing processes, quality control challenges, and the evolution of minting technology over time, making them valuable not just as investments but as historical documents in metallic form. The community of people who search for and collect error coins has grown enormously in recent years, creating a vibrant ecosystem of knowledge sharing, trading, buying, and selling that makes the hobby more accessible and enjoyable than ever before. Online forums like CoinTalk and the PCGS forums, Facebook groups dedicated to error coins, YouTube channels that showcase finds and teach identification techniques, and Instagram accounts that post stunning close-up photos of error coins have all contributed to spreading information and excitement about the hobby. This community aspect means that even if you never find a $1 million error coin yourself, you can participate in the excitement of the hunt, learn from others' experiences, share your own finds even if they're modest, and enjoy being part of a passionate group of people who appreciate the fascinating world of numismatic errors. Looking ahead, the future market for 1985D error quarters seems bright based on several factors, including the limited supply of authenticated high-grade examples, the growing number of collectors and investors interested in rare coins, the increasing accessibility of information that helps people identify valuable errors, and the proven track record of rare coin values appreciating significantly over multi-decade time periods. As older collectors pass on their collections to heirs who may not share their interest in coins, estate sales and dispersals bring additional coins to market, occasionally including treasures that have been off-market for decades. And sometimes these coins turn out to be spectacular finds that set new auction records and reignite interest in particular error types. The story of the 1985D Washington quarter worth millions is ultimately a story about hope, persistence, knowledge, and the enduring human fascination with treasure hunting. It's a reminder that value isn't always obvious, that learning specialized knowledge can pay literal dividends, that attention to detail matters enormously, and that extraordinary opportunities occasionally hide in the most ordinary places, waiting for someone observant enough to discover them. So whether you're now motivated to start systematically searching through quarters, whether you're going to dig out that old coin jar and check everything in it more carefully, or whether you're simply going to pay more attention when you receive quarters as change, remember the lessons from both the 1984P and the 1985D Washington quarters we've discussed today. Fortune truly does favor not just the brave but the knowledgeable and observant, and the next amazing numismatic discovery could be made by you. Happy hunting. Keep your eyes open, trust your knowledge, and remember that every single quarter deserves at least a quick glance, because you never know when you might be holding something truly extraordinary. Thank you so much for watching Error Coins Hub, and I can't wait to hear your success stories when you find these incredible treasures hiding in your everyday change.